Good morning, everyone, and we welcome you all to our Sunday morning Roundtable discussion. This morning is Sunday, June 10th, 2018, and we are recording from the Plainfield Christian Science Church, Independent, Plainfield, New Jersey, the United States of America. And we will start today with our prayer from Florence.
This is from Miscellany under Christian Science Healing. Mrs. Eddy says, each day I pray for the pacification of all national difficulties, for the brotherhood of man, for the end of idolatry and infidelity, and for the growth and establishment of Christian religion, Christ's Christianity. I also have faith that my prayer availeth, and that he who is overturning will overturn until he whose right it is shall reign. Each day I pray, God bless my enemies, make them thy friends, give them to know the joy and the peace of love.
Thank you. And that's a perfect prayer. We'll be praying that. The President has landed in Singapore. So please keep that prayer in your heart. And then, from Miscellaneous Writings, Mary Baker Eddy. We today in this classroom are enough to convert the world if we are of one mind, for then the whole world will feel the influence of this mind, as when the earth was without form, and mind spake, and form appeared. Our subject today is God, the preserver of man. Our golden text, Psalm. O love the Lord, all ye his saints, for the Lord preserveth the faithful. And so today we're going to really work, learn, and pray to get a greater sense of what it means to have faith and to be faithful. So, what does the word faithful mean, or faith?
I read that it meant trust. To have faith is to trust and confidence in.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else?
In Science and Health, it described it as trustworthiness or trustfulness. One would be trusting in God for our well-being, and the other one was being trustworthy and working out our own salvation.
Thank you.
And the nice thing about that is that Science and Health also makes the comparison of the full sense, which says that what you trust your welfare to somebody else, some other person, as opposed to working on your salvation with God.
Thank you very much. These are all important points. Anyone else?
Understanding, knowledge.
Understanding.
And knowledge.
Okay.
But what does that mean?
That means that the Greek and Latin meanings of faith are stronger than just the ones that we're used to. And it's always, according to the Greek and Latin and Hebrew, beyond just believing, but knowing.
That's the basis of having faith in it, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I also like one of the descriptions in Webster's 1828. It says it's an affectionate, practical confidence. I think the affectionate, practical just kind of means something else to me.
Yes, I saw that. I like that too. And also the assent of the mind or understanding to the truth of what God has revealed. A simple trust of the Scriptures and character and doctrines of Christ. And faithful, a little different. firm adherence to the truth, constant, true, not fickle. I remember one of the first things Jeffrey told me when he came to church, that he was faithful and loyal. And I thought, well, those are two wonderful qualities. Faithfulness will see you through much. And to be loyal, you know, that's a word that somehow doesn't get enough credit these days. We are loyal ultimately to God. But that requires a deep sense of love for Him and obedience to Him, and to just keep going, whether it's through storm or shine. Pure peace is fine, whate'er betide. Mary Baker Eddy.
And then, further, it means to be loyal to His creation and loyal to the mission that He has given to you, to the divine purpose for which He created you.
Thank you. So you can ask yourself, are you faithful? Are you faithful in the little things? And I love to read in miscellaneous writings about obedience and faithfulness and fidelity. You can check yourself and ask you, are you being faithful? Now, Elizabeth, I'd like you to refer to your forum contribution, the faithfulness of Abraham. You can read
Okay.
the commentary.
All right. Well, in the lesson, Genesis 12:1. Now the Lord had said unto Abraham, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. And it just struck me how much faith that Abraham must have had in the one God to be obedient to this command. He was told to sever ties with his native land, his family, and his dearest friends. His country and those in it had become idolatrous, and this is from Barnes' Benson commentary, quote, He could not continue with them without danger of being infected by them. Thus God said, Get thee out. Hereby also he was tried whether he could trust God farther than he saw him. For he must leave his own country to go to a land that God would show him. He doth not say, It is a land that I will give thee, nor doth he tell him what land it was, or what kind of land. But he must follow God with an implicit faith and take God's word for it in general, that he should be no loser by leaving his country to follow God. And then from Science and Health, I thought this correlated to that. Quote, Having faith in the divine principle of health and spiritually understanding God sustains man under all circumstances.
Thank you. And I love that you brought it around to that statement from Science and Health, because that's a very important one. Two things will sustain you under all circumstances. Having faith, trusting in the divine principle of health. What is the divine principle of health?
Well, our health originates in God, and therefore it's perfect.
Thank you. Not too hard.
God good is our health, is our life. If God good is perfect, how could our life be anything other than that if we have faith in its divine principle?
Thank you. I love in Practice of Christian Science, Bicknell Young says, we understand health as a quality and activity of soul, our God, that is always expressed as a perfect and immortal body. Even a harmonious human body is not necessarily health. It's not necessarily expressing health. You know, a lot of people think they do. They think if they exercise and eat all the right foods and your body seems to be okay, that it's healthy. But if you believe in that, you can also believe in what else?
But it can go bad. With the flow.
Yes, yes, yes. Big Del Young goes on to say, health is the eternal state of spiritual being.
I know in Mrs. Eddie's treatment for every day, her first number is every time you declare you're perfect in God, there goes through the body a health-giving power.
Thank you, Fairley. Powerful statement.
But also, how can you really say you're healthy when you're like resenting or angry at people? You might be physically feeling all right, but are you really healthy if you're entertaining certain wrong thoughts?
Thank you. Very important point. And I have seen it. And I know of someone who was devastated because, she thought her father was in perfect health. He ate all the right foods and did all the exercise and all of that, and then suddenly he came down with something and passed on. But it's just what Florence said. He was hating. His thoughts weren't healthy. He wasn't entertaining, as Big Del Young says, the eternal state of spiritual being. So if you are having trouble with your health, don't look to matter for the answers, but look to your thoughts. And are you accepting your health as something human in the body, or are you knowing it's in God, in soul?
And if your human body appears to be healthy at this time, don't accept the belief that it's because of what you eat, or the exercise that you give it, or your DNA, or your genes, or anything other than God who loves you. Because if you believe it's any of those things, you will have in consciousness a belief that you could someday be unhealthy because of a lack of any of those things.
Thank you. You'll hear people say, I'm healthy or I'm this or that because, runs in our family or something, rather than knowing that it's always in and of God. Mrs. Eddy says this in Science and Health, too, that it's not a condition of matter, but of mind. It's very helpful to know this. It's very relieving when you're not feeling well to know this.
I think that's why she says that consciousness constructs a better body also. Science and Health.
Yes.
Now, we talked about a divine principle earlier. Throughout the writings of Miss Eddy, divine principle is linked with love, a capital L, very frequently. We are talking about health. And this divine love, it's a good idea to look within consciousness. Am I reflecting the divine love, or am I trying to manipulate something else? We talked about the hate, or even the human sense of love, which comes and goes. This divine love stays forever.
Yes.
If you're with that, you're pretty healthy.
But what we talked about yesterday in the churches, in one of the churches, having that divine sense of love rather than this human sense. It's going to be one day, quote, loving, and the next day hating. So having faith in the divine principle of health, we get a better understanding of that, and spiritually understanding God. So what is it to spiritually understand God?
I guess it would be not intellectual.
Thank you.
Not think of it as a man over God.
Thank you. We definitely.
That he's good one time and the next day he's not good.
Yes. He's a God of wrath. That's not spiritually understanding him. It's the God of love.
I think to understand him as those synonyms, the qualities in those synonyms are so helpful too.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right, Florence. And I think that is what she means when she says to spiritually understand God. To understand God as spirit, as life, as mind, as truth, as love. You can never know enough about God. And I always find that to properly think about who and what God is and what he does for us, go back to the synonyms.
I strongly encourage you all to work with Mrs. Eddy's definition of God daily. Go over all the that she gives. God, the great I am, all-knowing, all-seeing, all-loving, all-wise, eternal, and the synonyms, and then apply them to yourself. Apply them to our nation and world. Know it's the truth. Very health-giving to think of the synonyms and work with them. Sometimes people ask, well, how do you treat yourself? Well, that's one of the ways I treat myself. And treat anything, the truth.
You go to the definition of God and say, okay, that is what I am the image and likeness of. That is what created me in its image and likeness. You think of yourself that way, and then think of others as that being the truth about them. You get a whole different picture of life.
This is the spiritual understanding. You know because God knows. You see because God sees. You love because God loves. You are wise because God is wisdom. You connect yourself. This is declaring your oneness with the Father. And to think on these things, so important.
I know I'm very grateful for the synonyms, especially with watching, because going through the synonyms with whatever we're watching, it's easy to see logically that the wrong picture can't be found in them. So I always find that to be helpful.
Thank you.
And then what we struggle with as, human beings, if you want to think of it that way. When we struggle, what we struggle with is the illusions that appear so real to us. And, an evil person looks awfully real, can appear awfully real. In fact, that is the illusion. And that is how we handle it, and that is how we heal it. There is no other way to heal.
So knowing these two things is going to sustain you under any kind of circumstance, whatever how severe it is. And you see it in the story of Abram. What he did, his faith, and that sustained him, his understanding of these things. So thank you, Elizabeth. It's an important illustration. And then Mrs. Eddy says in Science and Health, if men would bring to bear upon the study of the science of mind half the faith they bestow upon the so-called pains and pleasures of material sense, they would not go from bad to worse until disciplined by the prison and the scaffold. But the whole human family would be redeemed through the merits of Christ, through the perception and acceptance of truth. For this glorious result, Christian Science lights the torch of spiritual understanding. And so think of that and test yourself. Where is your faith? Do you have half the faith in God? At the end of the lesson, it says, when we come to have more faith in the truth of being than we have in error, more faith in spirit than in matter, more faith in living than in dying, more faith in God than in man, then no material suppositions can prevent us from healing the sick and destroying error. So you ask yourself, do we have more faith that this thing in North Korea is going to just bomb out? Are we going to have faith that the presence and power of God will be there and that let there be peace on earth? Where is our faith? Are we going to have faith that, or belief that we're going to be sick and dying, that we're all doomed to get old and croak? Or are we going to have faith that God is life and have faith in our living, and then when it's time we walk out? What did you say yesterday, Jeremy?
Oh, we have to live out of this, not die out of it.
Yeah, we live out of this life.
That was Vic Milligan.
Thank you. Are you going to have more faith in what the doctor said to you, or what your husband has bossed you around into believing, or your boss at work, than you have in God and what God is telling you? Where is your faith? What are you going to trust? Your affectionate loyalty. And think, she says, just have the faith. Tremendous things would happen. The whole human family would be redeemed through the merits of Christ. So let's use this faith today and every day to change ourselves, our nation, our world.
And this is the mental anatomy that he says is essential for us to go through. We should be thinking about what we have faith in. I mean, everybody has faith in something. I mean, we all, from the day we are born, we have faith in something. We start out with having faith in our mother, and our parents. Then we learn about God. And then,
hopefully,
but within each one of us is a seed of truth that there is God. And we are all conscious of our existence. And we are all open to the angels of truth that God sends to us. We either pay attention to them or we don't. But we all have faith in something.
Well, certainly before coming here, I had a great faith that my life meant nothing, and I was going to be at a very, very poor end. So.
Well, and that's it. People who don't have faith in something good, positive, end up, expressing their lack of faith in anything good with, negative experience. But God never leaves us helpless. And if we have even just faith as a grain of a mustard seed, a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of faith in something right that is godlike, that tiny, tiny amount of faith will preserve us, will hold us together, will give us some hope for hanging in. God will never leave us. If we have so much faith in stuff other than God, whether it's medicine or whether it's psychology or whether it's whatever, or other people, well, we're going to be susceptible to any kind of influence that the world throws at it. Life will be confusing.
We leave God, He never leaves us.
Exactly. But that one faith, that one grain of mustard seed that we have faith in the truth will win. We will eventually see the light.
And that's because that one grain, that's what's true, and all the other is not true. And that's why when you have children or opposition or family members that argue this point, you address that one grain. It's in there. You keep knowing it's there, and that's what you talk to. The other is they're just venting their frustration. But it's not the truth. Because why would not God create man with understanding and with faith? And that goes to the first citation in Science and Health. The history of Christianity furnishes sublime proof of the supporting influence and protecting power bestowed on man by his heavenly Father, omnipotent mind, who gives you faith and understanding whereby to defend himself, not only from temptation, but from bodily suffering. So we're all without excuse. He gives you this. He gives you faith and understanding. If you think you don't have it, well, that's what we're talking about today. I heard a preacher say once, if you don't have faith, well, you got to get yourself some. So that's what we'll do. And I love this, supporting influence. You need support. You need someone to influence you for the right. We have sublime proof that God is doing this, and then protecting power. God
this is Michael.
Constantly. Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
I just was trying to add to what was being said when it comes to faith in regards to Abraham, or somebody like that in a situation where they rely on their spiritual sense. Humanly, materially, it might look crazy to walk away from everything you know and go off on this journey, and yet that's what he did. And so I think there's another aspect is the moral courage to stick to your guns. In this case, whatever it is that you feel God is leading you to, regardless of how crazy it may look to everyone else or wrong it may look to everyone else. And along with that point, what was also mentioned about staying faithful. Somebody once told me where in Science and Health she talks about facing a temptation or sin and clinging steadfastly to God and his idea. They mentioned, if you were on a cliff or something and the wind was howling and there was rain and you were clinging to something, clinging to the edge of a cliff, you would understand very well what clinging means. And they were saying that's cling, that's what clinging is. You cling and you do not let go no matter what. And I'm reminded of that with what was being said, that no matter how difficult the circumstances may be, you do not let go. And if you feel like God is leading you in a certain direction, you keep going with that as long as you're led that way.
Thank you.
That's absolutely essential. Absolutely essential, Michael. It requires moral courage. Follow God. Period. You have to have the moral courage. That's what faith is. Faith in the right is moral courage. To follow your spiritual sense, what you believe God is leading you.
Despite what the physical senses might be telling you. And I love that. That's a beautiful definition of clinging. Yes, it's really clinging on, hanging on. And, when we were asked to give our loyalty to the BOD, when you get to points in your life, there was no question we were going to do that. But maybe it seemed crazy because we were kind of thrown to the dogs. But that was all right. It was the best thing that ever happened. And you will find when you follow your highest sense of right and you have the moral courage to do it, God will see you through step by step. And that's when we learn to watch day and night and all kinds of things.
Write our own lessons, and print our own, publish our own magazine. One by one, God led us to do what we're now doing. Start our own website. It was like we had no choice. We were clinging to what God was directing us as if our life depended upon it. Because it did. If we had not been obedient to God, we had just,
folded,
succumbed to the pressure of the human mind in high position, we wouldn't have a church today. God knows where any of us would ever be. Some of us might not even be alive today. Who knows?
So if you weren't obedient to God, that wouldn't happen.
If none of it would have happened. Exactly.
I love the verse from Hebrews in the lesson this week that says, "For he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God." This was Abraham. He was looking for something beyond matter. And I feel like this is what this church is doing, whose builder and maker is God, which involves all the synonyms that Mrs. Eddy has given us to depend on. That as our foundation.
Thank you, Dale. And that is what each one of us here is doing today. And that is why we are here together, studying this lesson together.
And in Matthew 17, Fairley, do you have can you read number 7 in the Bible?
Me? You want me to read that?
Yes, number 7 in the Bible, barely.
Okay, I'm going to do it right now. It's Matthew 17:20. Verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you.
Thank you. Okay, Florence, you spoke to the grain of mustard seed, and what did you say on the forum?
I like what Mrs. Eddy says in her article on possession. And a few excerpts from Mrs. Eddy's brief article on possession, which is on our website, says that Jesus loved the faith he saw in people, and he likened the size of needed faith to a mustard seed, the tiniest seed that grows into a big tree. In the article, Mrs. Eddy says we must take possession of what is ours for it to multiply, as the example of the loaves and fishes. If you take possession of what is at hand for you, it becomes the loaves and fishes for you, the basis of multiplication. If I claim even the little faith I have, that can help me increase my faith as I exercise it in facing the challenges that come. That is better than saying, oh, I have such little faith, and multiplying the false sense of lack. He says, keep practicing this is mine until the spirit of possession is gained, and you will feel all things are mine.
That is simply beautiful. That you make that into an article. That's just lovely. That's so true. Because you see, people who grow, they're claiming the grain of mustard seed and growing with it and increasing it. It's like the parable of the talents. Right? The guy with the talent used those talents, and he grew, while the one that hid it, I don't think didn't work out so well for him.
Was taken away from him, even what he had.
Yes. And you hear it in people's conversation. They're either seeing the glass half empty or they're seeing it half full. And the ones that see it half full pretty soon find a glass completely full. So it's
and the people who insist upon seeing it half empty feel like they're living relatively empty lives.
And they talk about it, think about it, and in belief they seem to manifest it. And then the more they manifest it, the more they believe it, and they're just having this bad dream they need to be awakened from. That's all it is.
And pretty soon you don't even have the glass, right?
Right. All gone.
Exactly. Well, this I couldn't help but think as Florence was reading this. This is a perfect treatment for lack. If you feel like you're lacking anything good in your life.
Whether that's money, health, joy. Go ahead.
Anything. Direction.
Yes. Companionship.
Demand that all that is yours, rightfully yours, you have. And don't settle for anything less.
Take the loaf and fish that you have and multiply it in your thought. Be so grateful for it. Share it with others. Talk about, oh, isn't this great? I have a loaf and a fish. Wow, hallelujah. Instead of, oh, I just have a loaf and a fish. Tomorrow I'm going to be starving. This is terrible. Look at the difference. Come join me. Have part of my loaf and fish. And it will multiply.
And have faith that God will provide tomorrow what you need tomorrow.
This can be so practical too. I feel that, for example, if you woke up and you're all stiff and supposedly can't move, are you going to believe that? Are you going to believe something like the statement that says that mind is the source of all movement and have more faith in that? Pretty soon you're moving.
That's lovely. Thank you. Yes.
I love the when you talked about the faith as a grain of mustard seed, and it occurred to me that that goes right in with faith as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Just that little tiny bit of faith grows into the big substance of things hoped for, and it's the evidence of things not seen. Just that little tiny grain of mustard seed.
Yes, you're declaring it before you see it. It's like Jesus gave thanks that God would hear him when he raised Lazarus from the dead. He gave thanks before it happened.
And that faith in what is true opens the door. You don't have faith in what is true, you've closed the door in your own consciousness, and you're going to have a little difficulty experiencing it.
And this is yesterday we talked about Philadelphia. They had a little strength, just a little bit, but they built on that, and God approved that. Because from there you go forward. So take what you have and use it. You could be so far along the way if you do that consistently. Well, and if you don't, especially after you know better as a Christian Scientist, you are a disobedient mortal. You are, and you'll have you'll reap what you sow. I mean, I can't make that nice. What, William?
Sitting on the naughty step.
Sitting on the naughty step?
From my own experience of late, reading Science and Health, nearly finished. If things seem a little somber, or things perhaps get a little bit morbid, skullduggery is afoot. Ordinarily, it's the usual suspects, anger, fear, or apathy, etc. And I just like to do the Trump thing and point them out and say, you're fake news.
Good for you. Fake news. And it is fake news. Thank you. Now, Parthens wrote on this topic as well, and about the more weight I place on the faith side of the scale, the more weightless the mountain becomes. And it's what we have been talking about. How much do you think of the good and the faith on the right side? It's a scale. Mrs. Eddy calls it a scale. Or if you're always thinking of the negative. So you keep your scale on the faith. And then he mentions in first edition, where she speaks to that, there is neither substance nor intelligence in the mountain mirage that seemeth what it is not, and such is mortal man. Intelligence is soul and not sense, spirit and not matter, and God is the only intelligence, and there is but one God. Hence, there are no believers. So far as this statement is understood, will it be admitted, and the true idea of God, which is the only real man, will appear to the understanding. And the old belief of intelligence and life and matter, named by Paul the old man, will disappear or be put off. For dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. Man never dies. It is only a belief of man. So that's quite beautiful. So we can speak to our mountains, because you have created your own mountains when you're so negative about whatever it is and dwelling on it. You don't, maybe, certainly not intentionally do this. It's part of our false education. So we build these big mountains, and then we're scared to death of them, and then we worship them. But here he's saying, and Christ Jesus is saying, speak to those mountains, and they will disappear as dust. Because they're not true. And if God is the only intelligence, I love that, then there are no believers.
So if you have faith in the right, in God, you'll be able to experience that. That's a promise.
You know, when I'm feeling like I don't have faith, for some reason, I talk a lot about this. I think of all that God has done in the past. And Hebrews 11 is wonderful. I know people that have memorized Hebrews 11. So, Fairley, you read number 9 in the Bible for us, please.
Okay. And what shall I more say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon, and of Barak, and of Samson, and of Jephthah, of David also, and Samuel, and of the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. Women received their dead raised to life again.
Okay, go ahead with the last.
Hebrews. Oh, wherefore lift up the hands which hang down, and the feeble knees, and make straight paths for your feet, lest that which is lame be turned out of the way, but let it rather be healed.
Thank you. Every time, if I ever write a God's the Preserver, I just have to include part of Hebrews. If you're ever feeling down, just read that chapter. It goes over and recounts all the wonderful things that God has done in the Bible. It is so stirring. It gives me chills. I love it. And I could see why people would want to memorize the whole thing. Just live it. Think of it. And then make your own list of all that God has done for you. Your faith will increase. God's given it to you, but you got to work at it. And the other thing to do is sing hymns or listen to the, on our audio, the beautiful songs of inspiration and Peter's. And one that I love, I listened to it 4 times this morning, is But a Light Thing. And we have it in our most recent Love is the Liberator, the words. God sent water out of the desert land of Eden. I should have Bruce sing it. Without rain or wind or cloud. It is so beautiful. In the same way, he will deliver you to freedom, though you cannot seem to see a way out. Do you think it's a hard thing to be healed? Well, stop thinking that if you would be restored. It is but a light thing to the Lord. And it goes on. And I listen to that, and I'm just, and it comes from, I'm transported to heaven as much. It comes from 2 Kings 3, 17. For thus saith the Lord, ye shall not see wind, neither shall ye see rain, yet that valley shall be filled with water, that ye may drink, both ye and your cattle and your beasts. And this is but a light thing in the sight of the Lord. So, you think you got a big problem? It's but a light thing in the sight of the Lord. What hasn't he done? And dear Peter, putting that in the most beautiful words and music, it's so inspiring, as are so many other of our beautiful hymns and songs. But that one I particularly love. So that's how you keep your faith. Maybe would any of you, now Linda, maybe you can tell us, you spoke about lifting up the hands which hang down. And
yeah, what I thought was interesting to me was that the heel is rather than being turned out of the way, what might your hook or your Achilles heel that might take you off the path, it was to heal it. And that's what I feel like this church is doing, and exposes, and so you can heal it so that you can keep walking the path. So that I can read something if you want from the, I had two commentaries. I did Matthew Henry and...
Yeah, maybe just the Matthew Henry one.
Okay. Matthew Henry, quote, a burden of affliction is apt to make the Christian's hands hang down and his knees grow feeble, to dispirit him and discourage him. But against this he must strive, that he may better run his spiritual race and course. Faith and patience enable believers to follow peace and holiness, as a man follows his calling constantly, diligently, and with pleasure. End quote.
And you know, the point being, make straight paths for your feet, lest that which is lame be turned out of the way, but rather let it be healed. Forward! Forward! Don't retreat. It matches what Mrs. Eddy says. The confidence inspired by science lies in the fact that truth is real and error is unreal. Error is a coward before truth. Divine science insists that time will prove all this. Whatever mountain you're facing, it's not real. And if you face it with God and you march forward and command it to go hence, it is a coward. It will go. It will disappear. It will return to dust. So how many problems, mountains have you just accepted and you don't challenge them and you let them run and rule your life? Well, make straight paths for your feet, lest that which is lame be turned out of the way, but rather let it be healed. Forward march. And you will find so much of what has terrorized you will disappear into its native nothingness. Now, I think I'm going to have Gary conclude. He's going to read from Miscellany. He's going to read the right and original and beautiful concept of the Mother Church extension, the prayers that went into it. It's beautiful. I've asked you all to read all of it, but he'll read some of it, because this is the truth. And this Mother Church extension and its edifice, and the original, all exist in mind, untouched by human ecclesiasticism. Go ahead.
And this is a letter written to Mrs. Eddy, appeared in the editorial of the Christian Science Sentinel, June 9, 1906.
Yes, anniversary date.
As the church was completed and was being dedicated. And they write, the significance of this building is not to be found in the material structure, but in the lives of those who, under the consecrated leadership of Mrs. Eddy, and following her example, are doing the works which Jesus said should mark the lives of his followers. It stands as the visible symbol of a religion which heals the sick and reforms the sinful, as our Master healed and reformed them. It proclaims to the world that Jesus' gospel was for all time and for all men, that it is as effective today as it was when he preached the word of God to the multitudes of Judea and healed them of their diseases and their sins. It speaks for the successful labors of one divinely guided woman who has brought to the world the spiritual understanding of the Scriptures, and whose ministry has revealed the one true science and changed the whole aspect of medicine and theology.
That is our Mother Church, that we can call Mother Church. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.